All right. Shake it out. Shake it out. I love this shirt. My brother got it for me because it's like from the original Dune, but it's got Pepe the Frog on the inside instead of the engineer. And as everyone knows, one of the benefits of being right leaning is you get all the Pepes you can handle. And who doesn't love Pepe the Frog? I mean, everyone loves Pepe the Frog. So as you can see by the background there, the one ring, this is green. So why the two greens aren't syncing up, I don't know. Um, I'm going to talk about the one ring for a little bit. The goods, the bads, and why you should buy this, and why this could be. I've got the basic set here. I have all the books, but why this should be uh, maybe your go-to fantasy game. The first reason is actually the easiest reason, and that is because you really love Tolkien. On the inside of the box, let's see if I can get it to show up. Come on, show up. No, it's not going to show up. Damn it. There it did. Uh, it has like a mini DM screen, but of course they have a DM screen for it too, which is amazing. It's got like all the info you need and it fits in the box. So let me remove all of the photocopied character sheets and everything. Again, sorry. I'll grab a random character sheet in case I need to do any examples of anything. And we'll talk about, first off, quality. This game is nothing but, like all Free League games, it's just absolutely a quality product. Everything in this box is just quality. You can really tell that Free League goes out of their way to make high quality games that you will be able to either have on a shelf or play for years to come. You know, like all of their hardbound books are, they got very, very good binding and silk page, keepers, and just everything screams quality, especially for the price, which is not very much. And unlike other games I could mention, uh, and that I might be fond of, this game you can buy one book and have everything you need to play instead of having to buy three. That one book has all the rules that the players need, all the rules that the game master needs, monsters, etc. You're just set with one book, right? The three book thing, I am not 100% sure. I mean, I guess it's because that's what D&D did back in the day, and companies have been copying that forever because you can make more money forcing people to buy three books, as opposed to the Free League way, which is to put out a box set, generally speaking, not always, to put out a game, and then to put out some amazing top quality source books. I like the Free League model better. I'm not going to lie, I am biased. So I've got these in sleeves. In this thing, you get a copy of all the weapons with the basic idea of what the weapon or armor looks like. That's a male shirt, obviously. And on the background, you get all of the characteristics, which is basically how much protection it offers and the load, which is encumbrance. A character can carry an amount of encumbrance equal to their endurance score. Now, some characters, dwarves, can have the weight of any armor that they're wearing. That actually is a really good ability if you want to play a more warrior type and you want to wear the heaviest, best armor you can get your hands on, then I would definitely suggest playing a dwarf. And if you take the special ability for your heavy armor that's like close fitting or whatever, that reduces the load of it also. So now your dwarf is wandering around, clad head to toe in the heaviest armor, which is basically just chainmail, and still able to walk long distances and do, things that cost endurance uh, relatively easily. So, dwarves, in my opinion, incredibly good if you want to play, the typical Tolkien heavy armored head to toe dwarf. The box set comes with these tokens here, and what they do is in this game they don't really use miniatures. What they do is you choose your stance in the battle, and your stance can be open, forward, defensive, or rearward. And this just determines where you are in relation to everyone else. So let's say you chose to be rearward, you would get penalties if you had to make any sort of oh, it says here can only attack and be targeted by ranged weapons. And the combat task you could use is prepare shot, which is a scan check, and that means you're looking for a target. If you're forward, then you can use intimidate or awe to try and intimidate your opponent, which would give them penalties to their die rolls. So that's a neat idea. You don't actually need miniatures, even though I have tons of Tolkien miniatures. You don't need them because every player just decides where in the battle they're going to be. Now, could you use miniatures? Yes, of course you could. And it really wouldn't change much. You would just say anyone base to base is forward. Anyone kind of hanging back, but close enough to maybe leap in and get a stab in, would be open. Defensive characters could be engaged with the enemy, but actively defending themselves. And then all the guys hanging out in the rear with bows are rearward. So, I mean, it would be easy to convert over. The next thing I want to show you is the dice and how they work, because this is a really interesting system. Now, I bought like a couple of sets of this and spare dice because I always do. But here's how the dice works. On the character sheet, if it's going to allow me to show you it, when you want to attack somebody, you're actually rolling versus their target number. Or they weren't rolling versus your target number, which is parry. This character, who happens to be a Ranger of the North, cultural blessing the kings of men, so he's a warden. So think Aragorn, except it's a female named Fruga. Her parry is 17. That means anytime a monster wants to attack her, they need a total of 17. Now, looking at her combat abilities, she has 3 dots in sword because you put skill points in each type of weapon, right? That means anyone attacking her would roll a die 12 and 3 die 6s. And if she's not encumbered or suffering from any shadow effects or anything, you roll all 3 of these dice. Of course, the 12-sided dice bounce on the floor. And you add them together. And if it beats 17, you hit. Now, she rolled a 7, a 3, a 2, and a 1. That's terrible. So 6 and 7, 13, she would miss, right? Now, there are 2 special facings on the 12-sided dice you have to be aware of. The first one is a rune representing Gandalf, right? If the Gandalf rune comes up on a die roll, you automatically succeed no matter what the white or the cubes say. No matter what the die sixes say, you automatically succeed. If an Eye of Moria comes up, you count the die 12 as a 0. So it's just the die sixes you need. The other complication with die rolling you should know about is if your character becomes encumbered, then all of a sudden on your dice sixes, the only numbers that count are 4, 5, and 6. 1, 2, and 3 count as 0. That represents the fact that your character is very, very tired. And encumbrance plays a big role in this. Of course, you've got your rule book and your big map of the Shire and Eriador, which is where this game takes place. The reason encumbrance takes a big place in this is because you don't really have hit points in this game. You have encumbrance, which can soak some damage if you get hit and you take some damage. Say it's a minor hit, they just hit you, but not really too good. Then you might, take a little bit of bruising, but that's all. And that's covered by your encumbrance, right? However, every weapon in this game has a damage factor, how much encumbrance they'll take away if they hit you, an injury number, and a any special abilities like pierce, whatever. So if she were to hit with her dagger or sword or whatever that does piercing, right? Let's assume she rolls good enough. She rolls a Gandalf rune and then enough to hit. That means that she can pierce her opponent. And if she pierces her opponent gets to roll a number of dice equal to their armor. And if they're wearing a mail shirt and a helmet, they would get 4 dice, 6s. And they roll them. And what they're trying to beat is the injury number of the weapon. So I rolled 2 1s, a 4, and a 3 because I am just sucking. That's a 9. The injury roll of her sword is 18. So they failed. The sword pierced through their armor and they take a wound. Characters can take 2 wounds before they are on the ground and dying. Most non-player characters can take 1 wound before they are on the ground and dying. And that is a very simplified version of combat. There can be a lot more that goes on between shadow and your current endurance and your current hope. I mean, it is more complicated than that, guys. But at the heart of it, that is the combat. And so, in a way, and I hate to say this, but the game in its own way, it's very similar to Middle-earth role-playing, which was a game back in the day where if your opponent rolled good on the attack roll and the crit roll, your character could just be dead. And a lot of us back in that time that played that game, we kind of liked the idea of that. Well, this game captures that. The first wound, your character is wounded, and that's when 1, 2s, and 3s on your dice 6s no longer count. You've actually suffered a wound. Instead of, blocking and maybe your armor deflecting blows off of your body, you have actually suffered a wound. Your opponent has put an arrow in you. Your opponent has stabbed you. You're bleeding. You are having issues. You're a lot less effective at everything you do because you're wounded. I mean, there you go. And there are checks that you can make to see exactly what kind of wound you've taken. In the box set, it's a little bit more simplified, but in the core book, it goes into Okay, you're wounded. What kind of wound are you wounded with? And it can be something like if the enemy was using a uh, bashing weapon, let's say, there's a possibility that they can break a leg, break a bone, crush some ribs in or something, right? Now, the good news is healing checks are a thing. There's not really healing magic, really, kind of, but not. However, anyone with the healing skill can try to make a skill roll to patch your wound up, and then after a number of days, you'll be fine. Fine. Okay. Now, the next thing that needs to be talked about, because you can't talk about any game without mentioning this, is character generation. Character generation in this game is so easy that it's like maybe the easiest character generation in any fantasy role playing game I've ever played. Maybe. Because it simply starts with you pick your kin. So here's Barty, right? Okay. Let's get it. Come on. There you go. Okay. Barty. Barty, right? If you choose to play a Barding, you write down your cultural blessings because every culture, every group of people, they have a blessing because this is Lord of the Rings. And they're start hearted. So their valor rolls, which is what you do if something incredibly terrible happens that would cause fear, they are favored. And what favored means is you roll 2 die 12 and you pick the best one. That gives you 2 chances to pick that Gandalf rune, right? And automatically succeed. Awesome. Their standard of living is prosperous. That means they can start the game with almost any equipment. And looking at them, it looks like they don't actually have a racial negative. That's good. Some races, like dwarves, have racial negatives. Like dwarves cannot use great weapons. They cannot use great bows. They cannot use a lot of things like that because they're dwarves. And they simply just can't do it, right? But you can roll a dice 6 or pick your attributes, strength, heart, or wits. You assign them. And then based on them, you strength plus 20. That'll be your let me see the character sheet again. Anyway, that'll be your endurance. Heart plus 8 will be your hope, and wits plus 12 will be your parry. That's the target number for people to affect you, not the other way around. Then you'll get a list of skills that you automatically get just for being a barding. You'll get a couple of combat proficiencies for barding. It's bow or swords, 2 dots, and choose any other combat proficiency, 1 dot. They got their distinctive features, which you'll pick like bold, eager, fair, fierce, just little things to help you role play. Like, what's your character's personality like? And then your languages and typical names. And that is it. You pick those things and you're just about ready to go. I say just about because then you have to take 10 XP and spend them to raise skills, however you want. Then you pick your equipment, and depending on the prosperity level of the character, that determines which weapons you can choose. The barding, because they're profitable or prosperous, can pretty much start the game with any kind of equipment they want. After that, you would choose one mystical thing about one piece of equipment you carry. And you would choose one special thing about your character itself. This is because this is Tolkien, and that's how Tolkien works. So if you wanted to say you had a sword that was keen bladed, therefore did more damage or had a higher injury rating or whatever, you could. And you should name the sword. You know what I mean? You're playing a barding character with a special sword. Absolutely name it, orc cleaver or scale bender or whatever, And your special ability a lot of times could be something like good natured or whatever, and it would add to your hope score or something like that. So these are called rewards and virtues. You get to start with one. During play, you can gain more. So, cool. There's cultural specific virtues, but I didn't start any of my character with cultural specific virtues. I feel like when they gain virtues during play, they can choose from the cultural ones. But to start, they just got general virtues. And then the rest of the book just goes into how to run the game, how the fellowship phase works, which is really cool. Instead of just traveling overland, you have a fellowship phase, you have a adventuring phase. So they've kind of split it all up. So you have the journey phase, and during the journey phase, the characters make rolls depending on what their position in the group is to determine how the journey works. So the guide is in charge of decisions concerning the route, how often they rest, and supplies. The hunter is in charge of finding food in the wild. And there can be multiple hunters, multiple lookouts, multiple scouts, but only one guide. Only one person can be the guide. The lookout is in charge of keeping watch. That's important if you're traveling through the wilderness, because, you don't want to get ambushed by a bunch of orcs or trolls or anything like that. And then the scout is in charge of setting up camps and opening up new trails. If you get lost, the scout finds new trails, right? Each of these things comes with rolls that you have to make as you journey. And there's an actual page the GM can keep or the players can keep that has a hex map on it. And it shows where they started and where they got to. And they can draw a map and write down events that happened and why they're journeying to where they're journeying. You make your marching test, and that can be dangerous. Because if you fail your marching test really bad, something bad could really happen. Like you could trip off the side of a hill and break a leg or whatever. You could get ambushed, etc. Once you get to the area you're going to, that ends the journey and it begins the adventure. So let's say your characters wanted to go to an abandoned city to recover an item for Bilbo Baggins, because Gandalf told Bilbo that he really needed that item. So Bilbo hired you, and you're going to go get the item and give it to Bilbo, and he's going to pay you some money or whatever. And then at some point, he'll hand it over to Gandalf, right? That's how things are going on. Once you get to that area, it goes into a more exploring ruins, going down caves and dungeons and, fighting monsters and trying to do whatever your adventure actually was. And then at the end of it, you journey home. So you got to do the journey back to the place. And then you get the fellowship phase. During the fellowship phase, you pick a duration, which can be a number of weeks to a month, whatever. You choose the destination that you're all going to go, and then you update your character with XP, and you lose any shadow that you have, possibly. Your hope goes back up, etc. So the fellowship the fellowship phase is actually a very important phase, because during the fellowship phase, that's when you can choose an undertaking, which is like meet a new patron, heal scars, gather rumors, ponder stories, write a song, strengthen the fellowship, etc. So this is the part of the game where the players aren't actually journeying or adventuring. They're all just hanging out, uh, improving their characters and doing kind of the out of game stuff, but in game. So whatever. And then you've got the lore master sheet, which talks about sources of injury, simple failures, bigger failures like your character can get knocked out unconscious, stuff like that. Shadow paths, because I mean, if your character gets consumed by the shadow, they can actually misbehave. A great example in the movies or the books would be when Boromir tries to jack the ring from the hobbits, right? Gives you a list of Tolkien monsters, which is pretty good, and talks about, famous weapons and armor, elven craft, dwarven craft, the whole 9 yards. And then a little thing about Linden and the various, parts of where this game is set. The game is set in Erebor or Eridor. So I had it. Come on, let's do this. Let's do this right. Come on. Now I've vanished. I need to find exactly the right distance. There. See, you've got your map of Erebor or Eridor. I keep saying it wrong. And, each hex of this map is like, let's look at the actual hex version. What is the scale? I think one hex is like one day's journey is how they do it. And then it tells you what's impossible terrain, darklands, wildlands, borderlands, perilous areas like the Troll Shaws, or Angmar. That's a perilous area. Midgewater marshes, etc. And then, so if you were going on a journey, leaving from the Shire to go to Bree and then from Bree to somewhere, you could actually write down what's in each hex, like map it on the journey page. And then if you encounter stuff, write down what you encounter. That's pretty neat. Anyway, like I said, these books are beautifully made in the Baltic countries, Estonia, Latvia. I think, I've seen 2 or 3 different countries. Let's see if I can see where this was printed. Just to say. Now, I had the first edition of this game, but I gave it away. And I think because I just never really understood it. Like I read it and I never really did kind of understand what the point of it was. However, having reread it, the second edition, I now understand it. And I'm like, oh, okay. I was just not understanding how the Gandalf die and the skill dice work, but now I do. And that's awesome. And I'm really happy. So it's got playtesting and everything, but I'm not printed in standard Impressa UAB. I'm not sure what UAB is, but it's where it was printed. Beautiful book, stitched, bound, the whole 9 yards. Just a great book. So that is the basic One Ring game. I will make videos for source books that go with it, like The Ruins of the Lost Realm and Adventures in the Lone Lands, and Moria, etc. But that's just the basic game. Everything you try to do, you roll a die 12 plus your skill dice, and you try and beat a target number. That's it. It's so easy. It's so simple. At the same time, because of the way injuries work, it can be very brutal, very deadly. So if you want to play a fantasy role-playing game in the great world of J.R.R. Tolkien, this game is for you. And if you buy directly from Free League, while it'll take it a while to get to you, you get the PDF for free, like instantaneously. So this is a game that if you don't own it, it's not super expensive and you might want to, especially again, if you're a Tolkien fanatic like I am. With that, I will end this video. I hope you enjoyed it. And if you didn't, comment below and let me know if I missed something that I should have went into more detail about, or maybe I remembered something wrong. Uh, Thumbs up, because that's how videos get shared around and all of that. And, my last piece of advice with the One Ring would be this. We love Tolkien. We love The Lord of the Rings and Hobbit. We feel like the lore should be respected by people making movies and television shows, right? Most of us can agree with this. However, if you're running the role-playing game, do not be afraid to make your players the heroes of the story. Now, this happens way before Frodo is old enough to carry the ring and everything like that, and very shortly after Bilbo has returned home from the Hobbit adventure. But make sure your characters are the center of everything that's happening in this region. And a great way to do that, again, is the patron system, which I briefly touched on. That just means who your characters are working for. It can be Gandalf, it can be Bilbo, it can be a lot of people, right? And if your fellow players are hardcore Tolkien fans and they want to do things like go into the old wood, the old forest, and get beat up by Old Man Willow, let them do it. I mean, that would be my final advice for running the game. So until the next one, this has been DM James talking about the One Ring, the system it uses to handle any tasks and actions you might want to do, and how awesome the production value of this game is. I mean, personally, if I had a choice between One Ring and paying all the money for the 6th edition D&D, there's no doubt in my mind it would be One Ring. It's just a superior game in every way. So I will end it there.